Hi there, I'm Malcolm Cesar, your host of the Super Affiliate BizLeads Automation Summit. And today I'm really excited about this session. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Paul Sokol and Sabrina McNally from BPro. And BPro believes successful in-person events inspire genuine human connections. Whether for arts, entertainment, or causes, they have set the standard for event promotion with modern strategies to sell tickets. And today they're going to be sharing their knowledge and expertise to give us insights into skyrocketing your marketing efforts by creating customer avatars and customer journey maps. Paul, Sabrina, it's great to have you guys on the summit.
Thanks for having us, Malcolm. We're excited to be here.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so Paul, Sabrina, before we dive deep into customer avatars, could you share with everyone a little bit about who you are, who you serve, and how you guys do it?
All right. Well, at BPro, as you mentioned, we are all about events and as well as virtual events too, especially with what's going on these days. And really, we serve anybody that is serving fans or event attendees for but if you're doing like what you're doing, there's over 1,000 fans a month that you're serving through some kind of event. That would be the type of people that we would want to work with. And the way that we do this is through advertising as well as automation. So if you use a CRM or something like that, we help we help do that.
Awesome. And can you walk me through exactly what customer journey mapping is and how people should start thinking about it?
So customer journey mapping is really about getting clear on what it is that you are trying to do. So when you're building out your customer journey, it's really about getting the scope clear. And what are you exactly trying to do? So obviously there's various scales and scopes to what you can do with especially automation these days. And if you have a plan, it's almost really kind of like a storyboard showing that end-to-end experience that the customer receives. And then underneath that, there's other layers that are detailing more of the step-by-step stuff.
Yeah, so
go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so as Paul was saying, it's not just the customer side of things. A lot of part of the customer journey is also what we have to do on our end in order for the customer to have that experience too.
Yeah, the operational journey is definitely part of the customer journey map. So if you're offering something, let's say it's a free sample, you need to make sure that you've properly figured out what is your process for taking the sample, getting it in the mail, shipping it off.
Yeah. So we talked about a scope, and there's various levels of scopes. Some are broad to the more detailed. With that being said, which scope? How do you determine which scope you should choose for your journey maps? What are the type of factors that decide whether it should be broad or descriptive?
That's a really good question. When we're mapping out customer journeys, it comes down to it's taking people from one asset to the next, and then it's the different ways that they get there. So if you're taking people from an ad to a landing page, and then they see the thank you page, and then they're going to their email, and then a sales page asset, like you want to figure out, okay, how do I get people from, how to get people to the landing page, how to get people to the sales page, and those are the main assets. And then you figure out what's the best way to get people there from there. So as far as the scope, I would really start by looking at the high level assets and then figuring out how you're going to get them from point A to point B. And then that's where you can maybe be a little more descriptive or fancy with it. This is where you're like, all right, cool, I'm going to go ahead and send 10 emails over 10 days. But the entire point is just to get someone to that sales page, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. And when we talk about the customer journey, the first thing we have to have is a lead magnet. And, that can be an ebook, a cheat sheet, checklist. And you said before that delivering that lead magnet is a 4-moment experience. Can you walk us through those 4 steps, please?
Yeah. I actually, if you were paying attention, I did that a couple of moments ago. So looking at getting someone a lead magnet, let's say it's an ebook on something. In order for someone to request that and receive it, there's actually 4 things that are going to happen. So they're first going to hit your landing page, and then they're going to see the thank you page, and then they're going to get the email, and then they can actually download the ebook or the checklist or whatever.
Okay, and what's the best lead magnet in your opinion? Is it the checklist, the ebook that the customer really enjoys the most?
So that's it's based on what the customer is going to enjoy the most and what's most relevant for them. So some people may respond more to, especially consumers would respond maybe more to checklists. So if I was, I don't know, a plumber, for example, I could be like, here's a 5-step checklist to make sure, make sure your toilet's not totally broken, or something like that. But if you're targeting B2B and maybe your target are the higher level executive types, then they may not necessarily care about a checklist, but they might want to see an ebook or a report with some interesting data in it to get them thinking about stuff. So it's based on what's going to be the most valuable to the target, and
Right.
That's the best kind of lead magnet.
Right. And staying on that targeting, the best way to really find your targeted customer is to creating a custom avatar for them. And so can you explain a little bit to everyone what that means? Like, what is a customer avatar? Why should they really care about creating a customer avatar?
It's your area of expertise. Go for it.
So customer avatars are really important, so that way you can understand who you're talking to. Every customer is different, especially when you start looking at men versus women. They think very differently. They're at different places in their life. And so if you can understand what is important to them and really be able to speak to that, that is going to make your product or service that much more powerful to whoever it is that you're trying to get to by your product or service.
Awesome. And I know Sabrina, I know you created a customer avatar worksheet. Can you walk us through that worksheet, what you created and how it's impactful?
Yeah. So this customer avatar worksheet is a consolidation of a bunch of different tools or even just processes to create a customer avatar. The biggest one that we took from was digital marketers. They have a before and after grid, but a lot of people you'll see use psychographic and demographic information. So that's the top two parts on the worksheet that you fill out. And then after that, you start going into more, what are their goals? What are their values? Then it goes into the before after grid. We also have some, what is it, the sales pitch or the elevator pitch that we go into?
Yeah. So what's interesting about this worksheet that she's developed is it covers the entire spectrum of a person, because we're not just a demographic or even a psychographic. And then it talks about the behavioristics, like you were saying, with their goals and challenges and stuff. And then at the very end, it actually talks about the positioning. And this is where I think the before and after grid is. And that's where there'll be like an elevator pitch type section, because once you know who your target audience is and what their life's like, that's when positioning becomes relevant.
Great. And Sabrina, I know you talked about psychographics. Can you go in a little bit of detail about what exactly psychographics are for our audience who may not be familiar with that term?
Yeah, so psychographics, I like to describe it as what your customer is going to be saying about themselves. So it's also a little bit more about where do they get their media from, what is top of mind for them. So a lot of psychographics is going to be, it could be websites that they hang out on. It could be the different social platforms they see, and also just what's important to them. Do they identify as a Christian? Do they identify as a stay-at-home mom? What do they identify as? And that's really what psychographics are, is explaining who a person is outside of, are they man, woman, what age, and kind of things more of that sort. So demographics are more, if I look at somebody and say, okay, I can see that they look like they're, I don't know, maybe from the Midwest. Just what do I see when I look at somebody as a demographic versus what are they saying about themselves when I talk to them? And that's more of the psychographic bits.
Okay, great. So when someone's going through this process, they've gone through the process, they've been scoring according to those criteria, is there any danger that they realize they have multiple target audience or more than one customer avatar?
Yes, so that's going to be really common. Okay. One of the first things that I do with this worksheet is I automatically make two, one for men, one for women, because as I stated before, men and women just think very differently. Men I found to be and this is just a generalization that I found, is men tend to be a little bit more upfront and bold and willing to be leaders in the community, whereas women, not that they don't want to be leaders, they just lead in a different way. So I'll make two, like I said, I'll go ahead and just right off the bat make two, and then I collect data to see what is my top male avatar and what is my top female avatar.
Okay, and how exactly do you collect the data? What tools do you use?
So the tools I use right now are really just social media profiles.
Okay.
I really like to do a cross between Facebook and LinkedIn. You can use things like Twitter, you can use Instagram. It's just a lot easier usually for Facebook, because that will tell you a lot of that psychographic information. And what I do is, so I actually wanted to be a FBI profiler, and so I learned some techniques when I was interested in that, where you look at what people are doing and you make kind of associations with what they might be thinking. So a lot of times in somebody's Facebook profile, if they're showing themselves and it's just a picture of them and their dog, you can probably make the inference that the dog is a really important piece in their life. You can also just go and look at the type of posts that they're making, and if it's a lot of political stuff, you can see that they're very politically motivated or motivated by the things going on in society. And so based on that, you might be able to start formulating your content so that way it's maybe has a little bit more of a political edge to it, because that's what matters to them. So I think the question here though was just like, what happens when you have multiple? And so if you have multiple, you just create multiple, and then you pick whichever one has the most or the largest audience within it. What is the one that you're seeing pop up the most? So the example that I have here is we work with a cycle studio, and we ended up creating a male and female avatar, and it turns out that the female avatar was basically had the most audience. And so we just started formulating our ads to go for the females, while also having maybe a couple ads on the back end that were targeted more towards the men in the group.
Okay, and so you're primarily using Facebook ads, and that's how you're targeting them on Facebook? Are you also using Facebook custom audiences?
Yeah, so we'll do Facebook custom audiences. Paul is probably a little bit better with this one with exclusions, but a lot of times what we'll do is make lookalike audiences of the current customers that our clients have. So we'll just go ahead and upload the list and then create a lookalike based off of that, and then use that as kind of the foundation or the formula, or like the basic foundation of who we run those ads to.
Yeah, and then we'll use custom audiences for, like you said, exclusions as well. So anybody that's been, because it's a studio, they have classes and people book their classes. So we exclude anybody that, from the ads at least, we exclude anybody that has been to that booking page within the past 180 days. And we also exclude anybody that's been to their membership page in the past 30 days, because we don't want to be hitting them with offers all the time. And the main reason we use Facebook is just because that's where their target hangs out, and that's where they have their best social presence. If they were doing this but they were killing it on LinkedIn, then we would be on LinkedIn doing the same thing.
Got it. And is it just as powerful to create an avatar you never want to work with as it is to create an avatar that you do want to work with? Because I was thinking that if you know who you don't want to work with, you could essentially weed those people out, and that makes your marketing efforts even more targeted, because you know exactly what to avoid. So what are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question, and a great point to bring up is a lot of, and so yes, you would want to at least have maybe not a full avatar, but you would at least want to know a little bit about who are the kind of people that you don't want to work with. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times I would like to look at what do they value, because again, if what your potential customer finds important doesn't align with what your business finds important, then absolutely you would want to know that, so that way you can have those as qualifiers when you're going through, I mean, even at the lead magnet stage that Paul was talking about earlier, you want to be able to weed them out earlier, so that way you have deeper down the funnel, have more qualified people coming in.
Okay, yeah. And also, what is the importance in creating a story for your avatar? By trying to put them in a real world scenario, does it make it easier to really see how they are and how they react to certain situations.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I input onto this worksheet is a real world example. So with going back to the cycle studio, Paul's best friend's wife actually fits the profile perfectly. So we use her a lot to just go back and look and see how she reacts in different situations. What is she sharing about? And it really helps to just be able to see that real world example. And like you said, be able to know like this in real world is how they're responding. And so now that we've built the avatar and we've gotten some customers in, we're able to use those profiles to say, does it match up with the one that we originally chose? And we're finding that it does. And so that just, it just does make it easier to really be able to see how they're going to react.
Yeah, and this is where you get to the idea of validating the avatar, because the avatar is really, it's not something that's a one and done. You're always going to be learning what works, what doesn't work, who's resonating with what. And so when you're going back to your avatar, feel free to make adjustments too. Like if there was anything with, I can't think of anything we've taken out of the studio's avatar, because again, I was pretty spot on for the most part. But sometimes we may do some research and say, for example, hey, it looks like usually these people have kids. But as we look at the customers that are actually coming in, turns out they're actually kidless or don't have children. Kidless, childless. There you go. English.
Yeah, and it could be something that we could have been wrong about the age of the kids, and where that's really important is because parents with toddlers are going to react differently and have different goals and values than, or maybe not values, but just different goals that they're shooting for in life than somebody who has maybe a child that's going into college. You know, the person with the toddler is going to be more concerned about finding diapers and play dates for their kid versus trying to figure out a way to pay for school. So their focus is going to be a lot differently. So like the parents with the toddlers may not be as concerned with money as the parents with somebody going into college because they're trying to save for that. So yeah, so that's just one of the ways that we validated the avatar a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't know why this idea cropped up, but that's a really good point of, even something like the age of the children, you're going to have to talk about it and position it differently. So if you were like, I don't know, some nature trail or some kind of outdoorsy thing, you would talk to it differently to parents with a toddler about, coming out and hiking at the park and whatnot. Hey, we got swings and, a playground. Whereas if you're talking to parents that have college age kids, maybe you want to pull that emotional angle, like, hey, they're not going to be here long. Go spend, a really nice day in the park with them, so forth and so on. And that's just how one dimension of the avatar can completely shift how you're positioning things and whatever else is being dealt with in their life.
Right. So how often do you guys have to change customer avatars? Because as people, we don't stay the same forever, which means as marketers, we have to be able to adapt, because our avatar might change over time. We might start wanting to add in new products which target a slightly different audience. So how do we navigate that?
Yeah, so as Paul said earlier with the validating the avatar is once that's why you put so much time. I say so much like it's a lot, but you put time and really make sure that your first version is a good foundation for anything going forward. So as far as how often, I would say anytime there's a major societal change. So right now with everything that's going on, this would be a really good time to evaluate your avatars because there has been such a major shift in the economy and jobs and everything like that, that the values may have changed from what they were 6 months ago. So it's something that you at least want to be revisiting your avatar, I would say at the very least once a year, just to make sure that your data is actually validating what you originally put down. But past that, there shouldn't be any major adjustments to it because this avatar, I mean, unless you're completely changing your product or service, your avatar shouldn't really change that much.
Yeah, and if you're not using your avatar regularly as a tool anyway in your day-to-day, then you're missing the point of it. If you're literally only revisiting it once a year, you're kind of missing the point. When you're making ads and writing copy and whatnot, you should have that avatar sheet out, especially because at the bottom of it is the positioning and the challenges and the stuff they're dealing with, and because that was the research that went into it. So
Yeah, so Sabrina, you mentioned that societal change is one metric that we should be paying attention to decide whether or not we should be changing or adjusting our customer avatar. What other metrics do you know of that we should be paying attention to?
Let's see. That's a great question. So some of the things to pay attention to are, I mean, it kind of depends on your product or service, really. Because if you're just say like a wedding venue and you hold, events all the time, there are features on like Facebook, for example, and I go back to Facebook because they have so much data on the relationship between people. And one of the things you can do is you can target people who have recently switched their relationship status. And so that's one of the things that you can really pay attention to is if you are that wedding venue, you can just have a audience made out for anybody that changed their relationship from in a relationship to engaged. And then to start targeting ads towards them because, they're going to be looking for wedding venues here soon. And so then that's also an opportunity to use that audience of anybody that's recently switched their relationship status to see, again, how does that match your avatar? Does it validate the information? Does it change anything on there? Are you starting to see new audiences, come forward? So that would be one example of just life events that you can target through some of these social channels.
Okay, so now we have the customer data. We've gone through the customer avatar. We have the data. We know what they like. How can we leverage that information to really increase referrals and essentially get a viral effect to whatever we're selling?
It's a really fun question. So when it comes to virality and stuff, getting shared and whatnot, a big part of it has to do with the timeliness of it and the person's identity. So when you know who you're going after, your target avatar, and you know how they identify themselves, internally with what they believe in and what they're going for, you can create content that speaks to that. And really, you'll hear in copywriting, you want to enter the conversation that's already going on in the prospect's mind, and you can totally do that with all of your assets, with your sales pages, with your ads. If you're doing content marketing, putting it in your blog posts, it's super valuable to guide, not necessarily the strategy. I mean, it can definitely guide, where you may move. If most of your audience is hanging out offline, go send them direct mail. Direct mail still works. Yeah, that's kind of that's how it can impact things.
Yeah, and to add on to that, and to go back to your question also of, would you want to create an avatar of somebody that doesn't fit the profile? This is where that information would come in handy, because while you have somebody that doesn't necessarily fit the profile, it could be that even if you're interacting with them, you could be interacting with them and say, hey, I understand that we're not going to be the best fit for you, but maybe here's some competitors that will be. And then even that right there is building goodwill, and that goodwill could lead you to be able to ask for a referral of, hey, I understand that I'm not a good fit for you. Here's some solutions that might be. Do you have anybody that you think would fit this product or service? And that's one way that you could utilize the information on a customer avatar to really ask for more referrals, to just get you more business and generate more leads. The other thing too with that is we've come up with an angle. I believe it's the social proof.
The social inquiry angle.
The social inquiry.
You came up with that angle.
Yeah, where it's you ask the copy is basically, would this product or service be good for a friend? And just by asking that question, they first have to evaluate, would they want to do it for themselves? And then if they don't want to do it for, like, if they're like, hey, yes, I would go ahead and buy this product or service, and I also know that Sally down the street would also like this too. That may get them thinking about themselves, and then also all the other people in their life that it may fit for.
Yeah, it's a really good angle, because it totally slips under their radar, because most people aren't conscious to the fact that they're considering it for themselves in order to answer that question. So they have to quickly consider for themselves and then think of somebody else. So it's a fun angle. We usually throw it in there, especially when we're doing new traffic with a new anything. And it's a good control angle to test.
Yeah, because it gets people sharing, and I mean, you'll even see it in the comments. People will just tag their friends in the comments and be like, "Hey, have you seen this?" And then usually it starts the conversation.
Awesome, awesome. So, Paul, Sabrina, as we begin to wrap up this session here, I would love for you guys to give something of value to leave with our audience. Do you have any parting advice for our audience or something actionable to get started with today?
Let's see. So I guess I'll do a customer journey mapping one, and then maybe you can do some avatar stuff. So for the customer journey mapping, I would say today, right now, sit down in front of a piece of paper and just make a stick and ball diagram of like of all your assets. So like, again, so you have a little circle with your landing page, a circle with your sales page, whatnot, and then draw lines connecting them and to show how people get from one place to the next, and then start designing what that actually looks like. You know, are we going to have 3 follow-up emails? Do we want to have remarketing with this landing page if they hit it, but they don't necessarily opt in? And just take one part of your customer journey and model it out, and just be really mindful of what the customer experience is from step to step to step.
Yeah. So to add on to the customer journey bit, I would also say create 2 journeys, one which is what the customer experiences, and then one of the operational experience, and see how you can best make them line. So that would be my advice on customer journey mapping. As far as customer avatar mapping, and seeing who your customers are, I would say look at what's not being said, because people will say one thing and then go and do another. So really take a look at what are their actions. Again, what are they liking? What are they posting about? What channels are they posting on? Because that will also show you the frequency of which they like their content to be delivered to them. So yeah, just that would be my advice, is just take a look at what's not being said.
Excellent. Go ahead.
Yeah, and just to put a bow on that, little icing on the gravy there, a great place to look for those are review sites, so like Yelp and Google reviews and whatnot, especially if you can find someone that you know as your target avatar. Look at the reviews, and again, what are they not saying?
Yeah,
that's just as important.
Because with Google especially, you can take a look at all of the different companies that they've reviewed. So it's not just, I mean, you can actually just click on the profile and it shows you like, hey, here's all the reviews they've left. And so you can see where they're hanging out from that point. You can see how do they feel about when they go to a steakhouse versus maybe a salad place. Do they have a preference one over the other? So yeah, that's a really good point, Paul.
Yeah, there's so much data out there that we can utilize to see what our customers like and what they don't like.
Oh, yes.
Excellent. So why don't you guys let everyone know how they can get in touch with you and where you're hanging out at?
All right. So if you're interested in learning more about what we do, you can go to bepro.events. That's our website, bepro.events. And on social, you can find us on Facebook. We're at facebook.com/bpronow. On Twitter, we are bprotweets. And I believe we are also bpronow on LinkedIn as well. So we're active on all those channels. We also have a YouTube as well, where we'll post trainings and things like that. And reach out to us on any one of those channels. We monitor them daily and make sure to connect with people. We don't just do this for our health. We like talking to people and helping them out.
Yeah, what kind of trainings do you guys have?
So right now we're working, let's see, what kind of trainings? Mostly they're video guides. So it's teaching people how to do stuff. So usually tool training. Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. That process is still being dialed in. But we will do customer avatars for people if they reach out and that's what they want. Okay. But as far as our trainings, we have one right now. It's called the Social Post Triple Play, where it teaches you just how to schedule a post on Facebook and set it to expire, which is something that you can do right out of the box, and not a lot of people necessarily know about it. And then we have an ultimate event promotion countdown that is an extension to that training, and that one's a paid training. And we've got a digital tracking setup that's coming out too. So if you want to make sure your website is talking to Google Analytics and Facebook and all those networks in the proper way, so you can advertise and get your money's worth, that will be highly effective for you. In fact, you're going to go through that today, Brina.
Yes.
On a new website you're working on. So yep. That'll be really cool.
Awesome. And we'll link to all this on the summit page below the interview, so you guys can get access to bPro, Sabrina, and Paul. And so I want to thank you guys so much for this information. It's been great. And I want to thank all of you guys for tuning into the Super Affiliate Biz Leads Automation Summit, for stepping up your game to be super affiliates and make an impact in the world, which is the purpose of this summit. And I'm your host, Malcolm Cesar. Be sure to grab your all access pass before the opportunity expires, and I'll see you guys in the next session.